Hello, students. Welcome to LBS 205. I'm Angela Macias. I'm your instructor. And each week I'm going to put out a short video like this to help you navigate through the material for our course and hopefully clarify things that you need help with before you get in the middle of your assignments. And I think this will be helpful. I think you're going to really enjoy this class. Many of you may be aspiring teachers or social workers or counselors or something like that, where you plan to work with kids. Some of you may be just taking this because you're interested and it fits your schedule and fits a requirement you have. I know this is a GE course, so we don't have only liberal studies and child development here. We have several different backgrounds of students. So welcome. I'm happy to have all of you here. And like I said, I will be putting out videos like this every week. So I'm going to quickly just go over what we should have already completed so far for week one. I want to apologize that our textbook mix-up caused a delay in us getting started last week. So I think we've got that worked out. So please check your accessibility for the Pearson textbook. It's an e-textbook. Please check and make sure that that works for you. I'm going to show you on Blackboard exactly where you should go to do that stuff. Okay. All right, let's get started. Here we go. First thing I'm going to do is share my screen and put up our calendar. So as you can see, we have a few things that we're doing last week and this week. The first one that you should have done last week is just introduce yourself in the discussion forum. That's it. Most of you have done so, but some of you still have not. So please go in and introduce yourself and take a look at some of your classmates' posts so you can get to know each other. This section is completely online, so we want to be sure that everybody is familiar with how the class works. And if you're not logging in and not posting things, I might assume that you are dropping the class. So please be sure that you go in there and make yourself known by clicking on the discussions and introducing yourself on that first one. The second one here in week 2, which is where we are now, you are to read chapter 1 and get familiar with Bronfenbrenner's ecological model, which I'm going to talk about today a little bit. And you're going to do a family story project. It is called a project, but it is a very short, simple assignment. So I think you're going to find it fun and easy. All right. Let me share my other window here. I'm just going to share a little bit about the course itself so that everybody knows what they're doing. Our textbook is a human development textbook as opposed to child development. In this class, we are going to focus on child development. So we're going to go from the ages of baby all the way up to young adult. And so we will be stopping there. There are, though, additional resources in the book that you can continue reading if you're interested on the remainder of these stages of life. So adulthood and later adulthood, aging, death, dying, all that stuff. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning of conception, birth, toddlers, babies, children, adolescents, teens, young adults. We're going to do that because majority of our students are taking this class because they're interested in becoming teachers, and those are the age groups you'll likely be working with. So I wanted to clarify that for you, but there are great resources in that book that I suggest you check out if you're interested in learning a little bit more. Now, you should know that most child development classes cover 2 main aspects of development, and that is psychology as well as biology. So we'll be looking at the physiological development of a human body as well as the mind and how it grows and adapts to new things. In this class, we are going to take also a sociocultural approach, which is why I have included this. I want you to take a look at this wheel and I want you to reflect on it. Think about the role of privilege in your own experiences in life. And I know this is a little difficult for some folks. Some people are really uncomfortable with this kind of topic, and I totally understand that. Maybe the online setting will make it a little easier for you to read through it and think about it and reflect on it. But this is something we must face and just sort of be comfortable with in the beginning here if we're going to talk about sociocultural impacts on child development. So this image is got a lot going on, but I want to explain it briefly. You have this line through the middle of domination, and everything above it are characteristics of people who are in some way, shape, or form rewarded in society through systemic privilege, right? So not necessarily individual wealth or riches or things like that all the time. It might not always be that each person who fits these categories on top feels that they have necessarily all kinds of privilege, but systemically, on a societal level, they are rewarded as such. Whereas folks who fit the categories here on the bottom might be marginalized more or oppressed throughout different systems in our society. So I want you to take a moment and I want you to look at each of these categories, and you don't have to share this with anybody. This is just for yourself. I want you to look at each, and I want you to consider each line a spectrum, right? So they're not all or nothing. It's not either or. It's a spectrum of where you might fall, right? So you're either far over on one or way over on the other, or you're maybe somewhere in the middle. Okay, so I want you to look at it and think about that and reflect on where you would fall for each of these categories. Now, when you do this, I want to reiterate that these are characteristics that society deems positive or negative. That doesn't mean that I am saying they truly are. Obviously, we respect every individual as beautiful and wonderful as they are. But society has created systems that oppress people, and that is factual. And many of those systems that oppress people utilize these characteristics as a way to marginalize certain folks out of the group, right? Or out of those who have access to something that allows for mobility or upward mobility or positive changes in their life. And so when you think about this, I don't want you to feel good or bad about it. Try the best you can to be objective about yourself and where you fall, and reflect on what that means. Think back to your own personal experiences and how might you have been somewhat privileged in society by your characteristics, or disadvantaged in some cases based on your characteristics. I'll give you a moment. Maybe you want to pause the video and take a look and reflect for a moment. All right, so now that we've looked at this and thought about it, I want to also hit home a couple other points. Number one, we are in a child development class. So sometimes this feels a little bit weird because we think, oh, these are not topics I like to think about when I'm talking about children, right? But the reality is children grow up in the same world you live in, and they are going to experience those same things just like you did. And so at a very young age, kids are exposed to those systemic forms of oppression, whether it's through their own interactions with other people or watching their parents experience something, seeing things at school, church, on the playground. They are experiencing things and seeing them all the time that teach them that they are part of a category of people. And that is something that they might not have had naturally on their own, but society has created those categories and starts putting them in those boxes, right? So it is inevitable that all children will start to understand these things over time. The second thing I want to reiterate is that this wheel of categories that labels one person privileged over another does not mean that a person has necessarily an easier or harder life. So for example, if you have a bunch of these characteristics up at the top, that doesn't necessarily mean your life was all easy, of course, right? We know that people have all kinds of hardships. People have all kinds of struggles that they try to overcome. And that doesn't take away from that. What it means, though, is that probably your hardships and struggles was not because of these characteristics. It was for other reasons, right? Whereas someone who has more characteristics on the bottom may have both personal struggles that are not related to those, and on top of that, will also have some experiences with marginalization or oppression that is systemic and not because of choices or just random circumstance, right? So we want to think about it that way. It's not meant to make anybody feel like their life should have been better or worse, or that they are necessarily having it easy or privileged in a way that should make them feel bad. But we should all recognize where we fall on these categories and understand that in certain cases, if you have some of these characteristics on top, then you have been privileged probably at some points in your life. And maybe you didn't notice, and that's okay. That's the whole process we're engaging in right now. And I know it can be a little uncomfortable, but I want us to do this because as we look at children, we look at their psychological development, their physical development. We have to also pay attention to the sociocultural things that they interact with every day, and that impacts their development as well. Okay, so I have put a link to this presentation in Blackboard, and I want to point out that you can also come here if you're tired of heavy things that I've been talking about and watch this wonderful video of kids doing funny things. I actually included this for a reason, not just because it's funny, although it is great and entertaining. I included it because I want you to see how children behave and what we think is funny, and how did they come to this conclusion to do the things they do? How do kids make decisions? Are they or are they not emulating adults in certain situations? You'll see that there are some circumstances when they absolutely are emulating adults and copying those behaviors. In other situations, they are not. And they are acting in ways that violate what we consider social norms. And so that's something else to think about, is how kids do learn what those socially acceptable norms are. So this is a fun way to consider that and reflect on it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to pull up Blackboard, and I'm going to show you a few things in our class that you should be aware of. And I'm going to actually put it into student view so that it looks just like it would for you when you enter Blackboard. Okay, and then I will also allow for you to, I'm going to post an area in the discussion board for you to post just different questions that are not related to the lesson or the assignment, just different questions you come up with throughout the class that you want help with, okay? So just be on the lookout for that. When you come in here, there's obviously going to take you to this announcements page. You're going to click on content, and you're going to see that I've organized the class into these 3 things so far. There will be a lot more on here. Right now, everything that you need to start with is in course info and materials. You should already have looked at the syllabus. I'm actually going to update a couple details in there I noticed were not designed for the online asynchronous class. So the majority of the assignments and everything is the same, but there are a few details I'm going to revise. So I will be putting a new one in there in the next couple of days. There are directions here for accessing your textbook. Please try it. Open up your red shelf here, go to Pearson, see if you can get to the book, okay? We also have a course calendar here that is what I already showed you at the beginning of this video. So take a look at that so that you know what is due. The last thing I want to point out is over here on the left, there's a discussions tab. And this is where you should have already visited. So you can see we have 21 people have already done it. Great. We still have several more of you that need to engage in that. So please go there and introduce yourself. And then you'll see that there is already a week 2 discussion forum about your family project. You can access that here through discussions, or if you come to content, you'll see there's a folder all about that project here. There are directions here. I'm always going to have the directions in green. There are additional resources. So I've put a video, I put a link to a website, I put a visual aid, and then here's the Dropbox where you turn it in. This is another link to the same forum that you saw in the discussions tab. So you can access all of that here. So anytime we have an assignment or project, it'll have its own folder like that, and you can access all of it here in one place. All right, that is it for this week. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to meet with you. I'll be posting my my office hours pretty soon, and you'll be able to drop into Zoom sessions and ask questions there when we're back on campus in a couple of weeks. I know our class is online, but you'll still be able to come by my office when you're on campus and if you want to ask questions or work with me in person. All right, have a wonderful week, and please be in touch if you need anything.